Hey Brad, how's it going?
Pretty good yourself?
Doing well, doing well. Thanks for having me on.
I appreciate you coming on, man.
Yeah, of course, of course.
How's your Friday going?
Friday's going good. Yeah, a bunch of calls this morning, but finishing the week strong.
That's great. So yeah, we started Athletes Launch, earlier this year, and it's to help former athletes in their transition to life after sports, right? And many athletes experience the same thing, and what we're trying to do is, help make that transition a little easier. And then, why I'm having you on today is to kind of try to share stories, and I think it's helpful for others to see people that have done it and gone through it. And I think your story is really what
No,
it's all.
I appreciate that, and it's funny because this morning all my calls have been like networking calls to try to find the next opportunity job wise. So I'm kind of in it, like literally as we speak. So maybe that's a cool little perspective. But yeah, man, I'm an open book. So wherever you want to go with it.
Yeah, let's start out with just your football career and from like a young age. Like when did you fall in love with football?
Yeah, so I fell in love with football. To be honest, that's my first memories are football. So when I was 5 years old, my oldest brother was Washington State Player of the Year, won a state title for my high school, Skyline High School. This is 2000 when I was 5 years old, and I don't remember life without football. And I think a lot of athletes and guys that make it at a high level, like it's the core piece of your life. I always say the term that yeah, I operated life. Yes, I got some degrees and I did some school and I had other interests and whatnot, but I was operating life through a football first lens, through a sports first lens. I was a basketball guy growing up, a little bit of baseball here and there, but football's always been a part of me. I grew up in a really football rich hometown, which people don't always think about that when they talk about Seattle and suburbs outside Seattle. You don't necessarily think that, but my hometown from about 2007 to 2012, when my senior year, it was a good run there. We were top 20 nationally ranked team year in and year out. A lot of D1 talent, a lot of big time guys. And it was kind of when I grew up, it was, if you were an athlete, you played football and you won state titles. That was the standard and it was exciting. And it was an awesome way to grow up.
When did you realize that you were really good at this?
Ooh, probably like third grade when I was the only team in the conference that threw the football. So everyone's running wing tee and all that, and we're out there. We're not reinventing the wheel, but we're running slants and fades and little bubble screens and trying to. I mean, most youth football teams, they're putting their worst guy at corner. Well, we're attacking that guy. So no, it was fun. And yeah, I don't remember. I mean, part of me wishes I would have played a different sport, but when you're in it, I don't regret it at all. In terms, I was always a quarterback. That was always it. We were always spreading it out, running the spread scheme back late elementary school, early middle school.
And then you get to high school and you're like, the face of recruiting, right? You're top 10 recruit, you're the number one player in the state, you're the number one quarterback coming out that year. What's that like?
Yeah, it was awesome. I mean, I mentioned kind of early elementary school, and the dream of so many kids at that age is to be what I was at 17 years old, is to be the top quarterback in the country with my pick of the litter in terms of which schools I could have gone to, which it was a dream come true. I worked my ass off to get there, and I put the work in at an early age to make those dreams a reality. But I was grateful to be around some great teammates and a great program. Was fortunate. I went to a public school. I didn't even have to go to a private school, which is oftentimes what you hear with big time recruits. I was kind of born into this community, which was an awesome experience, but it came with a lot of pressure. But I say this now, excuse me, I say this now to people that ask me about that experience and kind of how me at 25, how I resonate with this is like, I don't really know life without pressure. My brother was a big time quarterback. A lot of people don't know this about my story, but I replaced the number one quarterback in the country in high school. When I was a 2B sophomore, Jake Heaps had just graduated. He went to BYU. He was the number one guy in the country in the class of 2009. And I replaced him. So there was pressure in my community, pressure in the state. Who's going to be this? Who's this curly headed guy that's going to replace Jake Heaps? So that pressure and that standard, I always kind of grew up with. So it was there. I felt it, but I embraced it. I liked that. And it allowed for a lot of fulfilling days and fulfilling games. And it was something that I'm grateful to have two parents that kind of raised me to be able to handle that. But I guess it's a long-winded way of me saying I kind of always had this. I mean, obviously it grows with as you go. I mean, the USC pressure and scope isn't as big as Skyline High School, but I think as you grow and you're kind of used to that lay of the land, it's always just kind of been part of something that's part of my life.
So when you're, a high school recruit and you're thinking about where you're going to go to college, are you ever like even thinking about what is besides football, like what like a degree means, what could be next after football, or it's like, man, I'm going to college, I'm going to be a starting quarterback, I'm going to get in the league, and that's all that I'm thinking about.
Yeah, I love that question because I push guys on this. To answer your question, I did think about the other things. And I think we live in a society where when you're in it and you're 17, 18 years old and you start and you talk like that, it's viewed as a weakness, right? It's, oh, you're not all the way in on football. Oh, you gotta be tunnel vision. You gotta be tunnel vision. But then at 25, now we're celebrating me, for lack of a better term, for having that mindset. And to me, it's a double standard. And I push back on people with that. I don't view looking at other directions when you're in it as being weaker or whatnot. The reality is I was a football first guy. I worked my ass off. I was a guy that, hey, I'm here to play football, but I also wasn't delusional to the fact that the statistics aren't on my side, right? The reality is most guys don't make it, even if you are the top guy. And I mean, I've said this in a lot of my content. Like, there's people out there that call me the biggest bust in college football history. I'll wear that, but the reality is, like, it doesn't work out for most guys. And most guys in my spot, like they do at least get a shot. I didn't get it done. It didn't work out for me. But because of having that perspective when I'm in it and picking a school and going to class and hacking the system, that's what I always say. I got a few degrees out of my college time, not dropping classes. I mean, they're making you go to school anyways. I'm not a nerd or anything, but I'm trying to take advantage to set my life up for a better trajectory, even if things don't work out. And so to circle that back to answer your question, I was thinking about other things, just the route of, hey, where do I want to go to school? What's the value of a USC degree compared to something else? But it was more like the network with USC and what that could do for my life just outside of football. I was thinking about those things. But like I said, it was always through a football first lens and not being delusional to the fact that, hey, whether it ends for you at 24 like it did for me, or if it ends at 44 like it's going to for Tom Brady, you're going to have life after that, and trying to just set yourself up for success at every point of the way.
So tell me a little about your SC career. Like, I mean, not just the football stuff, but what was life like for you as a kid, going to college and being a big time recruit and a big time player on campus there?
Yeah, it was awesome. The joke I always make is I'm pretty sure my first 3 years, people thought I played baseball or volleyball. I roomed with a volleyball guy late in my career. That's the beauty and the curse. I remember having lunch with Matt Barkley. The beauty and the curse of USC is there's a lot of big names on campus. A lot of people with famous ties, famous parents, their own stuff going on, their own aspirations. So even the starting quarterback, or in my case, most of the time at SC, the backup quarterback, don't get me wrong, I'm still a football player. It was still cool, like all that stuff, but it isn't like Alabama or Oklahoma, two other schools I looked at, where you might not even be able to have lunch on the center of campus, that type of stuff. So it was still cool. It was still awesome, but it wasn't like the rolling out the red carpet like some of these schools that you hear. And some of the stories that I heard about Alabama, Michigan, Oklahoma, something like that. But it was great. It was a great opportunity. And I loved going to school there. And that's a big reason why when people ask me, oh, Max, why didn't you transfer? You're the number one quarterback in the country. Why didn't you leave earlier? The reality is, even though football was a grind, and the candid truth is a lot of those memories aren't the best times for me. When I stepped off the field, I enjoyed going to school there. My best friends to this day, some of my best friends to this day are a product of USC and USC football. And it's a great school. And a lot of people kind of shit on it a little bit for University of Spoiled Children, but the reality is everyone there is full throttle in all aspects of life, which is an infectious surrounding to be in, and it's a great school for sure.
It always shocked me going in scouting there, how quickly people were able to graduate. Like, every degree there is manageable to get in 3 years.
Totally.
You got two majors there?
I did, yeah. So this will be your audience might take value from this. So I graduated high school early, so I got there in January of my senior year of high school, And then they make, like you said, they make you take summer school the whole way. And so I just took a full unit in the spring and spring in the fall and full units in the summer. I was able to graduate in 3 calendar years, but like technically like 2.5 because of that extra added semester, my senior year of high school. So started the MBA program there relatively early, got a year of that program done. And then I had to transfer to Pittsburgh for my last year, got a master's from Pittsburgh. And then I came back after my football days and finished the MBA last year. So got a lot of it paid for. I had to pay for my final 2 semesters at SC because I wasn't under scholarship. So that kind of sucked, but I'll take that part. But no, like I said, hack the system. Try it. I'm not a nerd, but I'm a guy that can show up to class and turn in the homework and study for tests and do what you got to do. I had tutors and the whole deal, but at SC, a class is like $7,000. So if you're dropping that class, you're throwing $7,000 in the trash. That was always my mentality, and that was my approach.
So you entered what, 2014? Was 14 or 16 as a starter?
2016 was the starter.
16.
Yep.
So you enter the season as a starter, and Sam Darnold ends up taking your spot. I mean, first pick in the draft a couple years later. Are you ever like, does the thought cross your mind yet that, maybe football isn't what your future is going to be?
Yeah, I think if you asked me that when I was in it, I would have never in a million years said yeah. But we're all human beings. Like the reality is that at that point, people forget that was my 3rd competition battle at USC. I had 2 with Cody Kessler and 1 with Sam. And at that point, I mean, you're like, gosh, dang, man, like what the heck? And I mean, that was a dark time for me in 2016. I mean, my football life was on the line at that point. And like we've talked about, football was like the key piece of my life. So it was tough. But I think even throughout that at the time, I still said, hey, I got 1 more year. I put myself in a position to be able to grad transfer, be able to go to a spot like Pittsburgh. And so I hadn't thrown in the towel in any way whatsoever at that point. In 2017, when I went to Pittsburgh, I had a chip on my shoulder. I was kind of in isolation mode a little bit there, like living the way Pittsburgh's campus is kind of settled is the facility's off campus. So I live like right next to the facility. And I said, hey, I'm going to give this thing 1 more shot, whatever I got, everything I got, and prove these people wrong, or in a weird way, prove people right, that I am the top dog kind of thing. And that was my approach when I was in it. I hadn't by any means given up on myself, but the reality is when you lose those competition battles and you don't have success, when you are putting in the work time and time again, it tests you. And to me, I always said to people, I lived a very fortunate life, but the hardest thing I've had to deal with in my life is dealing with hard work going unrewarded, because that messes with your head, especially when it's time and time again where you are outworking guys. And I say that humbly. I don't say that to be arrogant, but I say that just because I know there are people that can resonate with my approach. But when you are outworking guys, when you are putting in the work, you're having the conversations, you're doing those things, and the success doesn't happen, how do you get back on the horse, dust yourself off to do it again? And that's what I've always said. To me, it's easy to work hard when you have a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, and you know it's there. What's really testing is when that pot of gold never showed up and you got to get back on that horse and make it happen. That to me is the true test of people. And that was kind of the story of my college career.
So, you finish at Pittsburgh, you got hurt a little bit at the end, and the NFL doesn't really happen for you. What did you do then?
Yeah, so that's kind of so I got hurt. I tore the labrum and busted up my right shoulder in week 5 of 2017 at Pittsburgh. At that point, had the whole surgery go around, and I throw with my right shoulder. So the idea of a labrum in your right shoulder is pretty tough. So to make a long story short, I ended up rehabbing and training and trying to chip away at it for about 15 months. Got to the point where in December of 2018, so 15 months later, I kind of got to the point where it felt like it was now or never for me. It was either going to happen for my career. I had done the rehab stuff I could have done. And I speak to this as well. There's always another surgery you can do. I could have flown to Germany and got some cutting edge surgery, but where I was at that point, I felt like I had left no stone unturned, and I called my agent. I said, all right, let's go make this happen. And had a tryout with the Steelers and the Redskins. And I was at the point where if me and you were playing catch, I would look like, oh man, this guy can really sling it. But when you're trying out for NFL teams and you're sitting on the right hash, having to throw a 20-yard comeback on the other sideline, that's where my arm just wasn't where it used to be. And I hate to make excuses, but I do paint that picture to at least, because I know people can resonate with that. And I'm not a guy that says career-ending injury, because I think we live in a society where a lot of people use that as a cop-out. They use that as a cop-out for why they didn't get it done. The reality is I didn't get it done. Injury had a play on that, but that's kind of where I was at. And that was Christmas of 2018. And I basically got to my birthday in 2019, February 2nd. And it just felt like time to hang up the cleats. And it was a tough conversation with my dad, emotional conversation of I mean, the dream and the goal and the expectation was the NFL, and I didn't get there. And I don't say that to be brutal. And people always push back and say, oh, Max, you played at SC, and I'm grateful for that experience. But I also know that there's a lot of people that resonate with the fact that when the goal is that North Star, that's a tough transition. And the reality is I had all these degrees, but I didn't know what I wanted to do with them. I had no idea what the next step was. We talked about, did I have other plans? I knew football was going to end at some point, but I didn't know what industry I wanted to go in. And at that point, I was a big fan of Gary Vaynerchuk. He's a name who's popular in the social media, personal branding space. And I said, screw it. I had some people in my network that were able to make a job working for him happen on his personal team. And so I flew out, picked up my bags, flew out to New York, took a job working for him, and was part of his team in 2019, which was a great experience, great learning experience. And that transition out of athletics, that first job is, I think, the hardest for a lot of people. And so it was a good experience. I ended up leaving that job and moving back to the West Coast at the end of the year, just because I kind of got away from football, kind of cleared my head a little bit, wanted to get back on the West Coast, took a job in a different spot. And like we were talking off air a little bit, I actually left that job last month and trying to make a different career pivot, still trying to find out what that is for me. I do some broadcasting on the side, but I'm 25. So I think a lot of people, when they come on podcasts and they come on shows, it's, hey, I did it, and now I'm speaking about my experience. I'm in it right now. I literally got off a networking call a half an hour ago, trying to figure out what gets me going, what that pursuit is. And that's kind of the Spark Notes version of what I've been up to since I left football 2 years ago.
When you started that job with Gary V, what was easy about it? What came like easier to you than other people that were there because you were an athlete?
Yeah, the work for sure. The work, the approach, that mindset. I've always said everyone has a different gauge of what's hard work, right? If you're listening to David Goggins, who is a Navy SEAL, he's going to be on one end of the spectrum, and insert whatever profession or person you want to say on the other end of the spectrum. And that is an absolute blessing that athletics gives you. Is all of us have been punched in the mouth before, especially if you're playing at a high level, and especially if you're playing football. I always say football gets painted in a negative connotation these days, but when you have to play a sport where someone is coming at you, gearing up to rip your head off, like that taps into a different gear mentally, whatever position you are. I'm a quarterback. I didn't play defensive line or offensive line, but I always push people that are in that spot of use that to your leverage. We've gone there. I've gone there in terms of pushing yourself mentally and physically. Use that to your advantage in the next step. That's what I'm trying to do now, is just the getting up for 6 a.m. workouts, getting up at 5 a.m. and having to run sprints. Like that's as hard as anything's going to get in terms of making a cold call or running an Excel spreadsheet or like something like that. Obviously it's just a different lane, but the work and the mentality is something that I embraced. And Gary, for those of you that know him, he's kind of setting the standard for work ethic and what are you getting out of your 24 hours in a day. And that was something that I felt like was a natural transition to me, and something that's just part of who I am. And I know a lot of athletes are like that. Like I almost want the work because the work comes with fulfillment. Like when you do put in the work and get something on the end. Like that's what it's all about. It's fulfillment and it's finding happiness. And so often I think we paint hard work in a negative light, like it's just wearing away. To me, that's not it at all. Hard work is how you push the envelope, and that's how you get part of cool things in life and meet cool people and find fulfilling things in life. So I am not in the camp that hard work's a negative thing, like so many people paint it out to be. Um, or I guess maybe not hard work, but just work in general. And that's what Gary was all about. And it was a great experience working for him.
What was something that was like difficult or something that you just weren't prepared for because you hadn't really had a job before?
Yeah, I think it's the fact of I was 24 and it's my first job. And when I was an athlete, I'm going to summer school. I'm not doing internships. I never had a job before that. Sure, I had worked, but the reality is most people start working at 16, some sort of job, if not really earlier. The fact that I was 24, that's 8 years where people can figure out what they like and don't like. And so at 24, I'm having to start that out. And once again, it's a big message I preach to athletes is so often you see athletes and athletes have a bit of ego, right? They're the top guy. So it's hard to walk in somewhere at 24, not knowing really anything. And a lot of guys fall in the trap where they take their first job and then they stick with that for a couple of years because they don't want to start over, right? They don't want to have to go. Like I took a minimum wage job for Gary Vaynerchuk. Like most people don't want to do that, right? That's a big ego check for people. And I think as a result, long term, they might get stuck in a job that doesn't really fulfill them as much because they aren't willing to say, man, I got to go taste a couple things. I might lose, for lack of a better term, in my 20s or in my mid 20s while I figure out what gets me on fire. But it's so worth it in the long run. And to me, that's the hardest thing. I see it so often with a lot of my former teammates is just when you're starting your career late. And I know if you're a 50-year-old listening to this, you're like, Max, come on, you're not late. You're still so young. But when you're in it, you don't feel like that, right? When other guys are getting on their careers and whatnot, and they've had internships and they've said, hey, I like marketing. I don't like HR. I don't like sales. I don't like accounting. They're able to kind of knock some things off and find their path. So often I see athletes struggle to find that because they aren't willing to maybe take a lesser role in their mid 20s while they figure it out, just simply off of societal pressure, relationship pressure, or just internal ego, to be quite frank.
Yeah, I know the ego thing is a big one. I mean, it was an ego hit for me, and I was working in professional sports with the Raiders for 12 years, and you have that shield, on your shirt, and it's easy to walk, in those shoes. When you don't have it, it's not as easy, and the ego piece is just things that people got to get over. But at the end of the day, it's not like the shield doesn't make you, or it doesn't change what you are as a person, and it seems like you have a really good head on your shoulders and understand that.
Yeah, to me, it's all about just long term, right? I mean, and it's funny because people always talk to me like I mean, like I already have it, whatever it is. But like the reality is, I mean, I'm scratching and clawing my way at like a broadcasting gig. Like technically, I don't have a day job, so like, I mean, hopefully I find that. But like, I'm still trying to figure it out, still trying to make it plays. And even though I'm not making a lot of the money, like sheer finances that a lot of my friends are right now, to me it's long term, right? It's the fulfillment at 30, at 35, at 50, 60. I mean, I've just always tried to learn from other people. And so often, like, I mean, look at your friends' parents. You're going to have people that are down your friends' parents. Like people are down a lifestyle trajectory that is awesome, and others that maybe aren't great. And so I always try to say, what moves did they make? And oftentimes it's taking calculated risks. Oftentimes it's taking less financially on the front end to set yourself up for a better trajectory long run. Like that's what I'm always about. And that part was the mindset in football as well, right? I mean, that's what it's about in sports. It's about going into a weight room session in March at 6 a.m. to set yourself up to take a hit on a Saturday afternoon in the fall. Like that's what it's about. That's how we're wired. And so that mindset I try to just carry on in all aspects of life.
So what are you thinking now? What are things that you're you're looking at and thinking might be a possibility for you? And what do you look at and be like, man, I don't want to do anything close to that?
Yeah, so I love that question. So working for Gary Vaynerchuk and Lewis Howes the past couple of years, I love the social media piece. I think that's not slowing down any which way in our society. So it was awesome to learn that. But I missed the upside, and I missed kind of the competition nature that some other industries have, like that fire, that pressure, that heat. A lot of my job was not people facing, just to be quite candid. It was a lot of behind the scenes work, working with your team and all that. And I feel like my personality is conducive to leading people, talking with people, doing that more sales type stuff. And I don't. That's not to say I'm going to go be a salesman, but I have my eye on the commercial real estate industry. It's an industry that a lot of people get into in the USC network. So trying to use kind of what I have in my network there, and that lifestyle, right? That commission-based lifestyle that when you build your book of business, which is a grind on the front end, on the back end, it allows you to ideally, in a perfect world, kind of manage your own schedule and have that flexibility and get out of that 9 to 5 structure, which I know comes with a connotation on its own, to be able to really live life on your own terms and set yourself up financially to do some cool stuff. Like I've alluded to a couple of times, I'm still chipping away at a broadcasting career. And so some of these more structured 9 to 5 jobs are not conducive for me to go take a 7 to 10 a.m. radio show for Sirius XM. And on the other side, the commercial real estate world, the sales world, if you find your right niche, you can swing both as a handful of broadcasters do. Because the reality is a lot of these broadcasters and analysts, it's not a full-time gig, right? You're only working 15, 16 weekends a year. Analysts, you're only working 60 days a year if you count radio shows and whatnot. And so that's a lot of other time to go do stuff and really push the envelope and see what you can make of your life. And that's kind of how I'm wired. But once again, still figuring out, still trying to find the right opportunity. And I say this humbly, but by doing some of the things I did during college and getting these degrees and making these connections, I'm trying to like leverage those. And leverage comes with a negative connotation, but trying to leverage those to just set myself up post football and set my life up down the best trajectory I can.
No, I think I always ask people for advice they would give for, maybe doing it differently themselves or to, current student athletes. And the biggest thing we always hear is networking and building that while you're in it. And it sounds like you did a good job of doing most of those things.
Yeah. And it's funny you say that. Like I could have done a better job. I networked with people, with some people, but I got off the phone with a big USC football donor this morning. Actually, it's funny you say that. Once again, to your listener, I don't say that to flaunt, but I just say that for athletes listening to. I mean, at 25, you could be in my scenario, like post football, post your sport, and I was kind of sitting there like, gosh, dang it, why did I not talk to this guy when I was in it? And like, because no one does that. And don't get me wrong, I don't ever want to be a kiss ass when you're in it. And we all kind of seen those guys where they're playing football and they're always kind of having an angle a little bit. And the reality is like, hey man, let's just go convert on third down. Like, and there's something to be said about that. But at the end of the day, I'm not talking for a full on coffee or anything. I'm talking really for just like a handshake and a hello. And that goes a long ways. And yeah, networking's a big thing. And other advice that I'd have is I think people can probably tell from my tone a little bit. I'm an intense guy and whatnot, but I look back on my playing career and at times I think I may have taken it too intense. And I was a work guy. I was a grinder. I was treating every practice like a game kind of thing. And once again, I wasn't a big stiffy. Like I had friends and I was cool with guys, but at the end of the day, I look back on my athletic career and I always push people to have fun with it, because I'm a guy who, the reality is things didn't work out for me in my college career, but I'm at 25. I'm happy. I got a good life. I got some things going for me. And if you ask 21-year-old Max Browne, if football didn't work out, what would happen? I would have thought the world was crashing and my life would be miserable and things would be the worst thing ever. And so I just say that to tell people that your mentality changes, life moves on, you have different chapters, and just have fun with it, enjoy it, and just let the chips fall where they may.
Yeah, that's great advice, because that's what we're doing at Athletes Launch, is just trying to show people that it's more than an athlete, and there, just because you had success in a previous life doesn't mean your next chapter doesn't have to be failure. I mean, it can be another success story. It can be a bigger success, and
Totally.
the rest of your life is way ahead of you, and you clearly have your head on right, and you're ready to attack it.
Exactly. Just trying to attack it and try to make some plays. And only other thing I'd say too is one thing I've been doing the past couple weeks is just like ask for advice, pick the brain of people. I mean, so often my conversations start with, "Hey, so and so, I just don't know what to do. Do you have any advice? Here's what I'm thinking. Here's where my head's at." And you'd be impressed with when you leave it that open ended. People will take it wherever they take it. If you asked me that question, I would have said some of the advice tips I just said there. You ask a different guy, he'll take it somewhere else, and you stockpile a couple dozen of those conversations, you'll get going down some good paths. And people are out there willing to help. They want to help. They want to help athletes. And I've talked about fulfillment a couple times. That says you can talk to people that are breaking the bank, but the most fulfilling thing is not a check. It's helping people out and getting them and advancing their lives. That's what people want to do. A lot of good people out there in the world. So I just challenge people to pick up the phone, reach out. And even if you're just like, "Hey, I don't know what I want to do, can you help me out?" People are willing to do that for sure.
Well, Max, man, I appreciate you jumping on here with me and talking. And man, your perspective is beyond your years, because not only are you living it, but you're you had your head on right, and you talked about things in the moment the way that you probably needed to for what you're up to now.
I appreciate that, Brad. No, this is awesome. Love what you're doing. And this topic, especially in this ever connected world of social media, where when your athletic success doesn't necessarily work out, that fall can be steep. So especially now in 2020, I love this message and love what you're doing. And yeah, thanks for having me on.
Appreciate you, Max.
Thanks, Brad.